Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into something that's probably familiar to a lot of people, power outages. Specifically, we're looking at the situation in the Indian state of Meghalaya and what happens when what you're told just doesn't line up with the reality of, sitting in the dark.
All right, so let's get right to the heart of it. The big question is this. Is the way officials are talking about these power cuts just a matter of words? Or is there something more going on, something being hidden in the language they use?
So let's rewind a bit. The story really kicks off back on November 2nd, 2025. People were getting really frustrated with all the power cuts. It was becoming a huge issue. So the state's power minister, Metbah Lyngdoh, had to come out and say something. And he made some pretty big promises. He basically said, look, this isn't what you think it is. These aren't failures. Instead, he framed it all as, growing pains. A necessary step toward making things better, upgrading the whole system for a brighter future.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The words he chose are super important. We're talking about more than just picking a different word from the dictionary here. This whole thing is really about political accountability. So think about it. On one hand, you've got load shedding. That term sounds bad, right? It pretty much admits, hey, we don't have enough power to go around. But then you have planned outage. Now that sounds completely different. It sounds controlled, positive, proactive, almost like they're doing everyone a favor. But let's be real. If you're the one sitting in the dark, does it matter what they call it? No way. For you, the impact is exactly the same. Your business is losing money, your kids can't study, your whole life is just stopped.
All right, so talk is cheap, right? Let's see how these official claims actually stack up against the government's very own data. Let's dig in. So the minister's big claim was, don't worry, we're telling people. He insisted that the word was getting out through local community leaders. The communication system, he said, was working. But when you actually look at the data from the official power company portal in January 2026, it tells a very different story. What you see is a clear pattern. Shutdowns happening almost every single day, lasting for hours and hours, hitting hundreds of people. And every single one is labeled scheduled maintenance. And get this is what really shows a disconnect. A single scheduled outage could last for a full 24 hours, a whole day. How is that minimizing disruption, like they promised? It just doesn't add up. Which brings up a really obvious question, right? If these things are truly planned, why aren't people getting a heads up through official channels? Like a text message, something in the newspaper, or even on the official website. Why rely on just word of mouth? Now, this whole issue isn't just about managing the grid day to day. It goes deeper. It's also about the big hurdles facing the long-term fix everyone talks about, solar power. Even the power minister himself pointed this out. He said that the cost to install solar in Meghalaya is way higher than the national benchmark. We're talking up to 55% more expensive. And the simple reason is the state's geography. It's super hilly and tough to build in. So because it's so expensive, not many people are actually signing up for these solar programs. The minister even called it low uptake. And what does that mean? It means everyone is stuck depending on the same old unreliable grid that's causing all the problems in the first place. It's a real catch-22. So you take the clever wording, you add the fact that the data doesn't match the story, and what do you get? You get what our source material calls an accountability void, a big empty space where accountability should be. Basically, this is the gap between what officials promise and what people actually experience. And that gap gets wider and wider when there's no clear data. It makes it impossible for a regular person to know, is this just a temporary problem that's being fixed? Or is the whole system broken? I mean, think about the most basic question. How much power does Meghalaya actually need versus how much it can actually produce? We don't have a clear answer to that. That fundamental piece of information is missing. And that leads us to the million-dollar question. How many of these so-called planned outages are really for upgrades? And how many are just a backdoor way of managing a power shortage? Without that data, you can't have any real accountability. Period. So what's the solution? What can be done? Well, the big takeaway seems to be that it's up to the citizens themselves. The way to close this gap is through people demanding real, honest-to-goodness transparency. And this isn't just a vague idea. There are actual, concrete steps people can take. You can start by simply keeping your own log of outages. You can ask your leaders tough questions. You can use tools like right-to-information laws to get the official numbers. And ultimately, you can push for something like a real-time dashboard that shows everyone what's going on.
And hey, remember that big promise from the minister? The one about no power cuts even during the dry season? Well, given our timeline is now late January 2026, that dry season is happening right now. This is the perfect chance for people to check for themselves. Was that promise kept? The proof is in the pudding, as they say.
And really, this all boils down to one simple truth. Just changing the words you use, that's not accountability. But making the data open and public for everyone to see, now that is accountability.
So why should you care about this, even if you don't live in Meghalaya? Because this whole situation, this dance between official stories and hard evidence, it's not just about one state or one issue. It's something that happens everywhere, all over the world. It's a classic case study in how to be an informed citizen. So we'll leave you with this question to chew on. The next time you feel like you're being left in the dark by an official explanation, literally or figuratively, are you going to ask for the data? Because the tools to hold people accountable are often sitting right there, waiting for us to use them.